Hello, everyone. Emily Gibbons here. Thank you so much for watching this week's video. And be sure to subscribe to the Literacy Nest YouTube channel. I'm pointing at you if you have not already. Hit subscribe so you know whenever I have a new video to launch on the channel. I really appreciate the support. I create these videos just as short tips, strategies, or any information that I have to share about things that might be coming up from the Literacy Nest. All right, so I want to talk about something today that I have been thinking about quite a bit in my work with Orton-Gillingham trainees. As you know, I am a fellow in training, and so it has been just an incredible experience working with these teachers this year, watching their videos, watching their students, and seeing the different opportunities that we can have to be both prescriptive and diagnostic. I'm actually learning about not only being prescriptive and diagnostic with students in more effective ways, but also how to be prescriptive and diagnostic with trainees to give them the feedback that they need to be thinking about maybe changing up their pacing a little bit, all with one thing in mind: helping that student succeed. That is the goal here, right? All right, so what this video is all about is invitations to accuracy. We know that in certain points of the lesson, sometimes accuracy, whether that be with reading or spelling, can sometimes decline a little bit. And sometimes teachers are left wondering, well, why? Why does that happen? Sometimes you might notice accuracy declining when you get into the dictation portion of the lesson. They've been rolling right along, reading accurately all throughout the Orton-Gillingham lesson, but when it comes to actually writing things down in written form, accuracy tends to be affected a little bit. So what we want to do is set up opportunities, and these opportunities I call invitations to help students become more accurate. These are scaffolds, these are supports that we're putting in place that are helping lead them to become more independent in their accuracy, but to also be more metacognitive, and that means more aware of when they might happen to make an error and how to repair that themselves. We can also support them with our error repair in our prompts and our questioning. There will be another video on prompting for error repair. I will be making that in the future. I've had some people ask me about that recently. All right, so what are some things that we can do if we're feeling like we're seeing students make errors? First of all, before I go over any of these tips, we want to make sure in our student observation that we are noting in our lesson plan notes any time an error is made, and think about why. What type of error was it? You don't have to have a long note-taking section for this thing. You can have a little code system. Maybe if there's just like a little X or a check next to your lesson plan of the words that they misspelled or misread, and then go back to that. But you've got to have some kind of a record in place so that you can address it in subsequent lessons. All right, so the first invitation to accuracy is decodable text. Why is that an invitation to accuracy? Because you're providing them with an opportunity to feel and become more accurate, because the decodable text will have text with skills and concepts that they've already been taught. So they're just getting more repetition, exposure, and practice with those words. And there's a high level of accuracy there. So they're feeling confident, making them want to read more. So for instance, in this book of decodable stories that I have here, this is just a bound copy of the bundle in my store. Yes, you can get a copy of this book. I will put a link in this video description if you want to order copies. This is just the bound version of the digital version I have in my store. All right, so decodable text is one of our invitations. Another invitation to accuracy is going to be a scaffold we call coding. Now, I've got a whole video and a whole blog post on the importance of coding and why we do it in Orton-Gillingham. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at that, definitely look it up. But yes, we in the moment, maybe if they are inaccurate, yeah, this could be an opportunist time to pull out something like a dry erase index card and writing the word down and having them code it. Coding does not just have to be for syllable types, syllable division. Coding can also be for morphology. You can pull out the prefixes and suffixes. You can find the base, things like that. So coding can depend. But coding is calling attention to the orthographic features of that word and reminding them whether it's a short and long vowel, whether there is a digraph, perhaps in this case we have the VCE syllable type, so our E is silent at the end of the word. And so coding can call attention, help them be much more metacognitive, and try to think of this as visualization so that in the future, after they've had lots of practice, when they do get stuck on a word or they're misspelling a word, you can ask them to either go back and code, or you can ask them to think about, do you see a short or long vowel there? Or do you see a suffix there? Tell me what it is. Okay. And so it's almost like a visual mind map for them when we're coding. So it's a really helpful scaffold. We don't code all the words in Orton-Gillingham, and it's something we don't have to do forever, but it is helpful, and it's a very structured routine that our students benefit from. Okay, so that was the second one. The third one is simultaneously having your activities address both decoding and encoding. And I say that simultaneously, happening at the same time. Okay, and you can do that perhaps with just quick sweeping and blending drills that actually have them write the word down on there. So here's the word check, and we've got, whoops, sorry, I don't want to have that blocked. We've got check. All right, and we've got our little sound magnets there, and then they can take that little red slider and slide it across and say check. Okay, so they can be using decoding and encoding activities, whether it be during this portion or during a time where you might be reviewing. You might have a board game like this one. Okay, I just used this recently with a student. We were practicing the diphthong OI versus OY, and they had to roll a little cube that had a little picture on it. For instance, so if they landed on the toy, they had to find a word that would have OY, and they would fill it in. So you could do joy. And so they would put an OY. They had to decide, oh, I need OY. So I have to choose that, fill it in, and then read it. So we're addressing both decoding and encoding at the same time, also practicing spelling generalizations. And in Orton-Gillingham, children with dyslexia need a lot of practice at that word level. Okay, so we do practice quite a bit there. We're not stuck at the word level for all that, but in some of these review portions, certain parts, yeah, we are practicing at the word level. So we want to try to simultaneously pick activities that will have both decoding and encoding at the same time. All right, the next one is strategies for unknown words. So our students need tools and tricks, and one of them is not to look at the picture when they get stuck on a word. So we know that is not scientifically based. It's taking our eyes away from the text. So you might have little strategy bookmarks like this one, where there's a tool or a strategy on there that you might put a little paper clip next to that you say, all right, this is the one we're going to focus on today, which is find the first sound. What does it say? Find the last sound. What does it say? Or having them touch each letter and blend that when they get stuck on a word. Okay, so this bookmark doesn't list the strategies that you're going to use every single time. It's a list of suggested activities on the bookmark that you can pull out and maybe pick out one or two if a child gets stuck on a word. This is from a multisensory decoding strategies resource that I can also link in this video description. Okay, so giving them the tools when they get stuck on a word so that they're not reverting back to like guessing at words, looking at the picture, things like that. They're focusing their eyes on the text and looking at all the letters. And then finally, the last one is something that takes a bit more practice, and that is interleaving or our spaced repetitions. So when we interleave, that means we are weaving back in the previously taught skills in short spurts so that our lesson, let's say if we have a lesson on CK, not every single part of the lesson might be on CK. It's going to draw back from previously taught material, and we can be thoughtfully incorporating that into our lesson on CK in our review, in our decoding practice, in our decodable text, things like that. And with our spaced repetitions, same thing. Our children with dyslexia need more repetitions, more than our typical readers do. And so we can put them in small, thoughtful points of the lesson at each time. And that can be still spiraling through previously taught material while still moving forward. So maybe a child may have mastered CK and you're moving on to say a lesson on QU, but you still will be addressing CK in thoughtful ways. So for instance, in your QU lesson, you're going to have a word like quick or a word like quack, right? So that we can be thoughtfully thinking about words that match the skills that they still need to practice in the newly taught skills too. Hopefully that makes sense with that last one. If you have any questions at all about any of these invitations to accuracy, definitely reach out and let me know. I will try to link everything that I have discussed in this video description for you. But let me know what you think. What are the invitations in this list that you find are really the most beneficial? Are there any that you'd add? I know for sure I would probably add a few more invitations. It's just that this would end up making this video really, really long. So let me know what you think. And I look forward to hearing from you. Once again, thank you so much for subscribing to my YouTube channel, and I will see you next time.